Blade Runner is a 1982 science fiction slash noir film directed by Ridley Scott. In this universe, Blade Runners are basically specialized police officers who hunt down replicants who have gone rogue. And in this universe, that's basically the name for androids. This film takes place in a futuristic and dystopian 2019 and follows former Blade Runner Rick Deckard, who's played by Harrison Ford, who is brought out of retirement one last time to hunt down a group of fugitive replicants in Los Angeles. Now, this review is coming 2 weeks after I watched the original on Blu-ray for the first time ever, and as you can see right there, it's the final cut, which is the definitive cut. Because a lot of people have told me that the original versions that came before don't really make a lot of sense, and it's better to just see the final cut, because then you'll understand everything after a while. And I'm doing this to prepare for Blade Runner 2049, which is coming out in about 5 days or so. And after seeing this movie, I am extremely excited for this sequel, and I love Blade Runner. And for those of you who've seen it, or maybe you're thinking about seeing it, or you just haven't seen it yet, you may not agree with me. You may actually think that it's a bit too convoluted and stupid, which, if that's your opinion, that's fine. Harrison Ford as Deckard is one of my favorite roles from him. This is actually the most different of the roles that he's done in his entire career. And Harrison Ford himself made Deckard this cop, assassin, you know, whatever you want to call him. He actually made him a very psychologically challenged protagonist, especially because he doesn't want to hunt replicants anymore. He's very burnt out from his time in the LAPD. And on top of that, through his journey through this film, Deckard starts to learn things that makes him think maybe he doesn't want to hunt replicants anymore. And it even comes with meeting a replicant who basically doesn't know at first that they are a replicant. So then it starts to make him question, you know, what makes us truly human? Or what makes anything truly human? Now, I do want to talk about just a little bit about the fugitive replicants in this movie. All of them do a very fantastic job, particularly the leader, who's played by Rutger Hauer. He does an amazing job. And throughout the film, I realized I'm not necessarily rooting for Deckard to take them down. I mean, I know that he doesn't really want to do it in the first place, but you just watch them and you understand they have a goal set in mind, and you understand it, and you can even empathize or sympathize with them. Initially, it may be very hard to like it on the first viewing. I know it was for me. And it's best to both take a little bit of time after the first watch and also rewatch it again. It is one of those movies that you have to watch a few more times before you can decide, hey, do I like this movie, or is this just a pile of garbage to me? And simply for that reason, I do believe that this was the hardest film for me to review so far. This is not your typical science fiction film. I mean, there aren't very many action sequences in there, and the pacing can be seen as very slow and methodical, and the plot is vague and convoluted at times. But that's mainly because Blade Runner is a thinking man's sort of science fiction. You know, like how a lot of people compare Star Wars and Star Trek. You know, Star Wars is for those common core science fiction fans, whereas Star Trek, you have to think a little bit more. And this film definitely is part of that latter, that thinking man's science fiction. You're meant to take in the atmosphere in this polluted and eerie futuristic take on film noir, and really just think about what are all these characters going through physically and psychologically. Especially because, looking back at it, there's less dialogue than I would expect, and honestly that's great because I've never been a fan of exposition, and I am a strong believer in actions speak louder than words, and in this film, they shout. What really stuck out to me in this film were a lot of the themes, and there's a ton of themes represented in this, which, giving a few of them away would actually kind of be spoilers, I guess, but just without giving any spoilers away, just the, as I mentioned earlier, the mere concept of humanity itself, the implications of technology on the environment and society as a whole, as well as mortality. Visual effects in Blade Runner are kind of similar when you think about it to Alien and Star Wars, wherein they still hold up after 30 plus years. I mean, as I told you, I bought the Blu-ray. This format is usually able to make older things look less authentic. And yet it still looks fucking fantastic. Seriously, if you had given me this film and I didn't know what it was, I had never heard of it, and you told me that it came out in the past, let's say at the most 10 years, I would have believed you. Let's also talk about the cinematography. The cinematography in this film is so breathtaking in that it doesn't necessarily feel like the kind of cinematography or camera work, whatever you want to call it, that you would see in a science fiction film. It feels more like something that you'd see in a film noir film, obviously, or just some of those old classic films. Ridley Scott has even been quoted to say that he wanted to mimic the cinematography of black and white films, and actually I got the quote right here, which were famous for utilizing strong backlighting as well as light shafts. And he has even said that one of the films that he took, that he wanted the cinematographer to take inspiration from, and I've never seen this movie, but I'm really looking forward to, is Citizen Kane, which is considered by many people and many different corporations to be the single greatest film ever created. The musical score is composed by Vangelis, who is a famous Greek composer who's mostly known for using electronic, progressive, and very ambient music throughout the majority of his scores. Blade Runner's score is pretty much, actually, yeah, I would say it's purely synth music, which can turn off a lot of people, but I personally think that it's a wonderful score. It's kind of like how, and I mentioned this in my Dunkirk review, but it kind of reminds me of how Hans Zimmer music is whenever he collaborates with Christopher Nolan. The music basically becomes part of the sound design and the atmosphere to me. And the same can be said for this music. And one thing that I always thought was interesting, and the only time I've ever had this issue, is with John Williams music. If I listen to just one track in any of his albums that I enjoy, I have to go all the way to the start and listen to the entire... Oh, excuse me. I have to listen to the entire album going forward, just from beginning to end. And after watching the movie, I decided to listen just to the soundtrack. I felt like I actually had the exact same problem with this movie, which, it's not a problem. That means that it's a great score. Just without listening to the entire thing, honestly, listening to individual tracks one at a time, some of the beauty is lost. In the end, I highly recommend this film. It's not going to be the cup of tea for all of you watching, but I definitely suggest at least giving it a try, especially if you're kind of interested in seeing Blade Runner 2049. This is Blade Runner. I can't speak today. Blade Runner is one of the best films I've ever seen, and I will be giving it 5 out of 5 reels. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on this film. Well, now it's your time. What are your guys' opinions on Blade Runner, if you've seen it? Do you love it just like I do? Do you think it's a pretty good movie, but it's not exactly, like, best of the best quality? Or do you just think it's a convoluted mess? And hell, are you excited for Blade Runner 2049? I want to know your guys' thoughts. Also, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more reviews and content. Check out my other videos on the channel, and even just go into the comments on any of my videos, it doesn't matter which one, and just recommend a film for me to review. I can do almost any movie, well, almost. Also, now that I'm back from my Seattle trip, I will be trying to push out a few more reviews more often, especially the more current ones, but I'm still waiting for my MoviePass card. I bought that damn thing like 2 months ago and it still hasn't shown up yet. Anyway, instead of complaining, I'm gonna go and edit this video so I can get it out to you guys immediately. Thanks again for watching. Farewell. Until the next video. Bye, guys.